The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. I'm so excited to be here this morning. Very excited. We got a couple of things that are going to be going on that I have wanted to do for a long time. So really excited about that. Glad that you're here with us. I always like to remind you that we like to cover autism from a 360-degree perspective. No matter where you are, no matter who you are, we want to be able to give you information that helps you get to the resources that you need. That's so super duper important to me. And we also want you to know that the entire show is meant to be interactive, that we do want you to participate wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever you bring to the table. So Kelby's going to show you some of the different ways that you can connect with us here at the show. I want to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go there, there are so many things to do and see. We want you to make sure that you sign up for the free newsletter because I know that it's going to help you to connect to things that you'll want to choose to watch. First of all, you get the free monthly newsletter that keys you into some of the things going on this month and some of the things that happened last month and some of the behind the scenes things that happen here because it's a pretty hilarious place. We have people coming and going and there's all kinds of things going on. Then you get the the weekly postcard that lets you know who the people, the tentative schedule for the week because it changes, right? And some of the highlights from last week. That's a really fun thing. We don't give away your address to anybody else, so sign up for that. Also, you can be watching the live show on that homepage, and you can, if you click on the triangle, it'll show you either live show or the most recently recorded live show. There is a playlist up in the upper left-hand corner that you can click on that you can just scroll through all the different shows that we've done over the years and see if there's something there that you want to take a look at. But I really want to point out the stuff that's to the side of all that, the series of white boxes, the one that says your questions, your comments. If you were to put your cursor in that white box and start typing and hit enter, it would show up here on my screen. And that's a wonderful thing. Even if I'm not here, it shows up here on the screen and it logs in and saves it so that I can come back and look at it. Now, I will tell you that occasionally we have mishaps with the live feature. We just had an update and I lost a very important message yesterday that someone from West Virginia, I had already read the question, but you sent me some contact information and we didn't answer it on the show. I had every intention of contacting you and it disappeared into cyberspace. So I know a little bit about that question, that you were in West Virginia. And I would have so appreciated if you would send me back your contact information so that I can connect with you because I lost it into the thin air of the intranet, whatever. It's not, no one else got to see it, but I lost it. So if you see that we have not answered your question, please feel free to write it in again. I can always eliminate duplicates, but I can't make something appear that isn't there. I have no way of caching and going back and looking and seeing later on. By the way, it is free to ask your question, and it is anonymous, which is a good thing, a bad thing when I can't get a hold of you. So please take the time to tell us what's on your mind, even if it's just to give a shout out and say where you're watching from. We really enjoy it. People ask us what's reinforcing for us. For myself and all of our guests, we love it when people are asking questions in real time. I know many of you wrote in during the segment the other day when we had Jonathan Mitchell on, and both he and I were really excited about being able to have conversation with him and with you. Which brings me to my next thing. We always have a cavalcade of guests and a lot of experts on this show, and I love that. I love bringing you experts so that you can pick their brains and that you can get good information and resources from them. I do like to remind you at the start of every show that I am not one of the experts. Please do not be fooled. The fact that I'm sitting here, I'm a parent of a child on the autism spectrum. I'm a former teacher. I'm somebody who's very passionate about this subject of helping individuals on the autism spectrum. And helping those of us who help individuals on the spectrum, very passionate about that as well. But I am not an expert in autism. Let us not be at all fuzzy about that. I'm 100% clear, and I want you to be 100% clear. But I do care. I know that together we can do this, that we are a powerful group of people, that desire to want to help individuals who are on the autism spectrum is nothing to be sneezed at, right? We're a serious group of people who have a great deal of fun and have a sense of humor, and we can get things done if we stick together. So I'm here for you. I know you're there for us. Write into us. Be a part of this. Si se puede. We can do this, right? All right. We start every morning with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to make sense of it. What in the heck are these people talking about? What do these things mean? We descend into alphabet land sometimes, and people start talking to us about an OT. And what I love is they talk about it as if, well, everyone knows what an OT is. And after you've been around for a while, you see that everybody in the autism community does know what an OT is. But if you've never had to deal with anything like this before, why would you know what an OT is, right? All right, we always give you an actual definition and a working definition. So, as you may have guessed, our jargon for today is OT. What does this mean? All right, let's take a look at our actual definition. OT stands for occupational therapist. Now, if you are the parent of a young child, you may still say, all right, help me here. What has this got to do with my child who's on the autism spectrum? I remember when my son was 3 and everybody started talking about, oh, well, you're going to get OT. What is OT? Occupational therapy. Excuse me? He's 3. What are we talking about? You're going to teach him how to use a cash register? He's 3 years old. So let's look at our working definition for occupational therapy. An OT is a health professional whose goal is to help people achieve independence, meaning, and satisfaction in all aspects of their lives. So if you stop and think about it, it's very much this spectrum, a lot like our community, of how do we help a 14-year-old to achieve independence, meaning, and satisfaction in all areas of their lives? Well, that's going to look vastly different than a 33-year-old, and it's going to look even more vastly different than what we do for the 3-year-old. For a 3-year-old, an OT might be working on a pincer grasp or a tripod grasp, because we know that we want them to be able to hold their own fork and eventually to be able to hold a pencil or a crayon for the skills that are coming up next in their life. And that might be what an OT works on. One of the great things that I have seen kids love over the years is that an OT for that age range might give them a worksheet that looks a lot like a coloring book. It's got a thick outline of some sort of a drawing of something that's exciting to them. And they will give them an old-fashioned push pin, sit them down on a piece of carpet and say, poke holes all along the line, and then we're going to hold them up to the light so that you can see the shape coming through with light behind. Now, kids love this, but it builds that grasp that helps them to be able to achieve independence, meaning, and satisfaction in all aspects of their little 3-year-old lives, right? It's not the only thing they would work on, but they're going to take that grasp and they're going to be working on that with a fork and a spoon and a knife so that they're helping to feed themselves. And this grasp is also going to be able to help them to pull up a zipper when they get to the toileting phase, right? So those kinds of things, very important. Wouldn't be the only things that OTs are working on, but very important. Again, with a 14-year-old, an OT is going to work on things that are vastly different than that. It might be for the 14-year-old figuring out how to pack their backpack. It might be working on being able to sit up in a certain way so that their back doesn't hurt when they're spending a lot of time on the computer. It might be helping them to be able to figure out and negotiate things that are specific to their individual lives, right? Because it gets much more open-ended when they get a little bit older. And again, if somebody's 33. But you can imagine that for each person, it should look different. So I always like to think of an OT as somebody who's got a very creative set of tools and that is a problem solver. Great OTs are people who are going to look at a situation and see an opportunity to solve a problem. They can be very useful. So for our families who write in and say, does my child need OT? Really, honestly, I think any of us could benefit from some level of OT. And we know that most often schools are readily willing to give families OT services. So I suggest that we all take those services and use them to their utmost. Don't be afraid to bring things up to your OT and say, hey, we're having a problem with this. We're having a problem with that, and let them be a part of your team to solve those problems. OT, it's a good thing. Who knew? All right, moving on. We always have a question of the day for you. We like to check in a little bit later on Facebook to see what you guys have written in. But our question today is, what job would you love to see your child be able to do? Let's set aside everybody else's opinions of what they think your child's capable of, what they think your child could do. If we could, for just a moment, let's dream and say, this is what my child loves. What fits with that? It's amazing to me that sometimes our kids have an area of interest that we might even call a perseveration, that they just can't get off of something. And sometimes we see people be able to develop that interest into something that becomes a lifelong passion that they become experts on, and suddenly that perseveration is not only socially acceptable, but it becomes their crowning achievement. I think back to Temple Grandin, and if you've seen the HBO film, and how her love for animals and being on a ranch develops, and her, she'll talk about how she used to draw horses all the time, that was just something that she did, and her mother encouraged her to draw horses, but made her have to look at other things as well. And she was so interested in the cattle whenever she would go to the ranch, and what the cattle did and how the horses behaved. And that interest in drawing and that interest in animals and animal behavior came together so that she is one of the best experts in terms of animal behavior in certain circumstances. Yes, it means that she's taken that to slaughterhouses, but it's made those slaughterhouses infinitely more humane for those animals. I have to say, it's sort of a gorgeous, gorgeous design for a life. If we could do that with all individuals who are on the autism spectrum and take a moment, we've had the pleasure of interviewing both Temple and Eustacia Cutler, her mom, on the show. And one of the things that's so striking to me about Eustacia is that Eustacia didn't try to fit the world into Temple, or the Temple into the world. She looked at Temple as an individual and said, well, what does she like? What does she do? I think that's a great design for parenting an individual on the autism spectrum. So dream for a minute. What kinds of things would your child love to do? Now, I know early on, I really thought that my child should be a Lego engineer, that he should work for Lego and build toys and things. And as soon as my son was verbal enough to be able to convey it to me, he was like, no, because those are toys. I don't want to build the toys, Mom. I want to build the real things. He's in an interesting phase now where he's much more about computers and designing things on computers, and not as interested as the actual build. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. But I know that it will involve computers. I know that it will involve building. I know that it will involve a level of creativity, and that's exciting to me. But what job would you love to see your child be able to do? And then, is there a way is there a way that sometime in the next year that you can foster that? Is there a way that you can take them to see something? We have taken my son to JPL, which is the Jet Propulsion Lab of NASA that's here in Los Angeles, and taken him to tour and see how the robots that they've designed to go to Mars. He's gotten to be in the same room with two different Mars rovers, one that's already there and one that's getting ready to go. It's exciting stuff. Feed their passion. Take them. I love Christina Adams' book, A Real Boy, and her son was so interested in planes. And so she, got all of her money together to take him to a very small airport and got a pilot so that he could sit in the cockpit with the pilot and that the pilot would explain things, and they taxied, and really amazing. So wonderful to be able to give them the thing that they're really interested in. A wonderful, wonderful gift to be able to do. We're going to check in a little bit later on to see what you guys wrote for what job would you love for your child to be able to do. Okay, we always have a topic of the week. Our topic this week, very exciting to me, autism and employment. How do we help our kids to be employable, and how do we help employers to be able to see how employable our kids are and how amazing they are when they are employed? We've heard from many different people this week, and we've over the years we've talked about this extensively. The people who do employ individuals on the autism spectrum always say the same thing. Wow, these are the best employees that we have. Their attention to detail, their passion for what they're doing, it's incomparable. So we'll continue to talk about that today. We've got a lot of different things going on today. Now, our schedule, we plan and the universe laughs, right? Our schedule says that Dr. Del Nadowski is going to be here, and that we're going to be talking about getting kids ready to work jobs, that we have autism news, and that we're going to have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox answering your questions. Well, both Dr. Nadowski and Dr. Tarbox are held up at a meeting. We will see who we get when we get. It is our distinct hope that we will get both of them. At the very least, we expect to see Dr. Nadowski. We'll see. It's one of those things that will unfold as it goes. And as I promised yesterday, we're going to start out in just a few minutes. I'm going to walk us through the skills assessment. Last week we talked about the 8 different curricula areas. Today we're going to talk about the assessment, how you can do it in a way that's beneficial for you and that you don't pull your hair out. And maybe it's actually a little bit fun if you take it in those bite-sized morsels. So we're going to be doing all of that and ever so much more after these messages. Stick with us.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tax, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back to Autism Live. My desk looks a little bit different because I'm going to be showing you, Kelby's going to help me here to show you as I do some things on Skills. So first of all, let's take just a second to talk about what Skills is. Skills is a multifunctional tool that is an online tool to be used in the treatment of autism. If there's one thing I can say about Skills is that it does so many different things that it's actually a little hard to talk about, because providers can use Skills as a curriculum and as an assessment tool and as a way to build behavior intervention plans and a way to track progress for kids. Teachers can use it as an interdisciplinary tool to be able to communicate with other teachers and say, I'm working on this lesson, here I'm tracking this progress, and then be able to turn it over to the OT and the speech and have them all collaborate on it. But parents can use it also. I use Skills and I love it. So I wanted to take this from the point of view of a parent and help you guys out with starting to use Skills and starting with the assessment. Now, an assessment is something that assesses. Don't you hate explanations that use the same word? But if we're trying to get a look at where we are in this moment in time, and that's really what anybody should do before teaching anything, because who has time to waste teaching something that somebody already knows, right? So if I'm going to teach you how to downhill ski, probably the first thing I'm going to do is ask you, have you ever downhill skied before? Do you know how to downhill ski? How much downhill skiing have you done? I have never downhill skied in my life, so it's a bad example because I don't even know what I would ask you to. But before I start to teach it, I should know where you already have expertise, because let's say that you already know how to stick your skis together to slow down, then I'm not going to start teaching there, right? I might check to see if you can do it and how well you do it and you're using proper form, but then I'm going to move on to the next skill along the way, right? So always a good idea, and I will tell you as a parent, I know that it's something parents get excited about if we know exactly where our child is. How many times was I, as we were starting out, saying to people, well, where is my child compared to other kids? Like, you know, can you show me any kind of a representation of, give me a snapshot of where am I? How bad is it? How far behind are we? Well, if you've wondered and asked somebody these questions and not really gotten the answer you wanted, I'm telling you, Skills assessment is the best possible use of your time, because you will get a snapshot in time of where your child is right now on a whole bunch of different skill levels, and you'll be able to see, wow, this is where my kid's strength is, wow, this is where my child is the most behind, and you can make decisions about how you want to spend your treatment hours based on that. How amazing would that be? And it's in your hands. The power is in your hand. You can do it today. You can find Skills by going to skills4autism.com. Okay, and when you go there, there's a button that you can push to start, right? It will ask you for a credit card. Keep in mind that everyone who starts with Skills gets 14 days for free. They will not bill your credit card until the 15th day. So you do need to put in a credit card, though. That's the way that works. And if you don't cancel it by the 15th day, you will be charged for the next month. But I think that if it's a very reasonable amount of money, and I think that if you go in and start on the assessment, you will see, this is worth it. I also want to say to those of you who you look at the amount of the monthly and say, wow, it is a very reasonable amount, but it's still outside the limits of what I can afford for where we are right now. Believe me, I get that. I want you to know, I want to beg and plead with you to let the skills folks know that that is your situation, because they work in conjunction with Autism Care and Treatment today. And one of the things that Autism Care and Treatment loves to do is to fund families for skills for an entire year. That they've done it on many occasions, and they say to me all the time, we just don't get that many people who are asking us to fund that. I wish that would change. If you need the funding for it, ask them for the funding. They know that for them, it's a very small grant amount, and they know that if families have already looked at it and know how to use it and want to use it, that they will get so much mileage out of it. So check it out. Okay. So what I've done is I have already logged into my account, and when you start with skills, you will get a username and a password. Obviously, I'm not going to share that with you here, my username and password, but it's very simple and you can figure out how to do that. And then you log into your account, you put your username and your password in, and it will give you something called the dashboard. And of course, I should have started out a little bit further, but Calby's going to show you my screen now. And I've already zeroed in a little bit on my dashboard, and I want you to see that it says skills on it, and it says my children over here, and I have multiple fake children. I just want you to know that these are not real children. These are ways that I can go in and show somebody else how to do it, ways that I can look up something on skills so that I'm looking at something other than my child, because every child is different, right? And I love to look at this so that I can help you guys to be able to do it. But I want you to notice that there are numbers across the top that say choose a child, start assessment, choose activity, and start treatment, okay? And they're green, but they'll show me which page I'm on. It's lit up in red. And that easily tells me, okay, I'm on choose a child. Now, if you don't have any children in there to start with, it won't show these people, like I have Fred 4, Britt B, and Hans F. Fake children. No, we're not disclosing anything. You'll see that I've got their birth date here, their caregiver, activities in progress, and progress assessment. And these are things that I've added to look at the assessment in particular. You'll see over here to the side that it says skills training video and add a child. So I'm going to go right now to add a child, because this is what you guys will do. Except I am on a thing. Kelby, oh, there we go. It did go to it. I don't know how to use something without a mouse. I'm inept. In any case, okay, so now I get a thing and it tells me required fields here, and I need to add a child. So and it has required fields that I've got to do it. Now, if you're like me and so many other autism parents, we get like, oh, who has access to this information? I'm going to put personal information about my child. I get fatutzed when I feel this. I'm like anxiety ridden. Who has information to this? This is any information you put on skills goes to it's more secure than what your bank has. Believe me, I'm as paranoid as they come. It's very, very, very secure. Nobody gets your child's information. Okay, so I'm going to put in TOO. I don't need to put in a middle name if I don't want to, and I'm going to say the last name is Walker, or Waller, because that's what I'm typing here. I'm going to say that this is a male child, and then I get to birth date. And by the way, if you're paranoid and you don't want to put in your child's real name, no one is going to bother with that. Put whatever name that you want to. But when it gets to birth date, and I know that a lot of times this is where we get the most concerned about, this is private information about my child. They'll be able to link it to my child. Who has this information? Again, safest possible place for this, and you can lie about everything else on here that you want to, but do not lie about the birth date. Or if you absolutely feel that you have to lie by 1 day or 5 days or, 10 days, but don't lie about more than that, because it makes a difference in what lessons it shows you. So, and I can't even begin to express how many times people have started out with their free trial, and they go in and they go, well, I'm not gonna put my child in, and they put some wild and woolly date in there. The first time I did it, I did the same thing. And then you spend some time on the assessment, and you find as you're doing the assessment, you go, oh, I really kind of want to know what how my child will look in this, and you start answering questions for your child, but you don't get to where you want to because you put in the wrong date, and they cannot fix it for you. You have to start all over again. So it's the one thing you must put in the proper date. So I'm going to say that this child was born in August, and I'm going to say 13th, and because I'm making up the child, I'm going to say they were born in 2012. Now you'll notice that it says confirm the birth date, and that's because everything that you do from this moment on in the assessment is going to be geared towards this child. Now, why, you ask? Why is this the case? Because skills never gives you lessons that are inappropriate for a child because they surpass what they should be knowing about. Okay. For instance, we don't want to teach a 3-year-old how to enter a conversation when it's a group. That is beyond what a 3-year-old socially should know, so you won't get to see that lesson for a 3-year-old. And you think to yourself, well, I want to see all the lessons. You don't. There's 6,000. You want to be able to see what's appropriate for your child. Eventually, you'll get to the point where, you'll see all the lessons that are appropriate for your child, but no one has time. No one has time when they're treating a child to go through and read all of the lessons. If you want to know what the progression of the lessons is, buy the card book, Evidence-Based Treatment for Children with Autism. It'll outline it all there. You'll get to read what the progression is, but don't waste that time on skills. This is valuable, valuable time. You get a choice to put in a nickname. Like I might want to call this child Stan. That for his nickname, and you get to put in an address if you want to and not if you don't want. It's not a required field. Here is one that is required though. Have you started an ABA program already? Yes or not. I'm going to put in yes. It does affect some of the questions that they ask you. If yes, then when. And I can say I'm not sure what the format is here, 2012. I'm going to say 2014. Let's see if it takes it. There is a space where I can put my child's IQ, but I can select unknown. Totally up to you. And you might ask, why are they asking this kind of information? Because they're going to track progress. There is also a back end on skills that disassociates information about your child from the data so that they can use it for research. Because one of the end goals of skills is to phenotype autism and to be able to show progress with different types of autism. No one can ever, even the researchers have no way of linking it back to you. Then it asks for caregiver information, and I'm going to put my name in here. And I put 3 N's, unfortunately, but I'm not going to fix that. And my relationship. I can put other, parent, supervisor, teacher, or therapist. And for this one, I'm going to say parent. And then you'll notice that there's another asterisk here that it wants to know what the autism diagnosis was. I can put autistic disorder, Asperger, PDD-NOS, other, or not diagnosed yet. And I'm going to say not diagnosed yet, okay? And if I put other, there is a box for me to put another diagnosis, because there are many people who use skills who have other diagnoses. And there is a tab here where I can get more information, but I'm going to submit this information. Now, automatically it adds this child to my list of children. So I can scroll down, can't remember what I called this child, Stan W. Yeah, but it put in the nickname. So we're going down to Stan W. And it says here the birth date that I had put in, and it says that he is 2 years, 6 months. So I'm going to click on Stan W, and it takes me to my dashboard where I can see information just about this child. And you see the name there, the 2 Waller, but it said Stan on the other because I put in his nickname. I've got the nickname. It says that I'm Shannon P. I'm the parent. Okay, so we may need to go to the screenshots that I did. Anyway, I'm going to click here, Start Assessment. I'm going to move on to number 2. We'll come back to this dashboard in a little while, but I'm going to move on to Start Assessment. Okay, and you'll see that the first thing that I get are screening questions. Okay, And depending on how old your child is, I'm anxious to see, it'll have, and depending on how you answer them, it gives me a count here. It says you have fewer than 11 questions left in the screening question. Now, if you're starting skills, I would say to you, depending on how gung-ho you are, do the screening questions, log in, get all this set up, and do the screening questions on the first day. And then we're going to take your temperature afterwards to see whether you move on. But this is a good bit of work for one day to just do the screening questions. And this is true for everyone. So, okay, it says, can your child use speech, sign language, or an alternative form of communication? For example, a picture exchange communication system, PECS, speech generating device, Makaton, etc., so that he or she is communicating is understood. What they're communicating is understood. Now, I understand what that question is. I do. But if I don't, then I always have the option of clicking View Example. And when I click View Example, it says you should only answer no to this question if your child has no means to effectively and appropriately use words to communicate. If your child is able to communicate using speech or via means of augmentative or alternative communication, or if the communication is limited, you should indicate yes to this question so that you have the opportunity to answer questions that will better define your child's ability. Now, for the sake of argument, I am going to say no, that this child has absolutely no means of communication that is understood by somebody else. And watch what happens to my number of questions. Oh, I have to submit. I was waiting for it to do it right then. I have to continue. So I push no and I go to continue. It says, please wait. And oh, it only lowered it to 10. I'm not going to answer all of these, and then we're going to take a break. But can your child stand with support? Because, and you think to yourself, why are they asking me this? Because if your child cannot stand with support, then they're not going to ask you a bunch of motor questions. But they are going to give you a bank of lessons to help you to get your child to the point where your child can stand with support. And if your child can stand with support, you don't need those lessons. So I'm going to say no, that my child cannot stand with support. And I've still got 9 questions. I'm surprised. I thought it was going to lower it exponentially, because sometimes if you answer a question a certain way, it just all of a sudden says you're done. Can your child stand without support? I'm going to say no and continue on. I've still got 8 questions. Next question, can your child physically move his or her legs? I'm going to say yes, but they're not standing without support or not standing with support, right? I think these are pretty, and now my question's lowered to 7. So it took 1 question out. So you can see that these change. Can your child physically move his or her arms? I'm going to say yes. And it's so important, because if your child cannot, you don't want to be having to answer more questions about that. My next question, can your child physically move his or her hands? I'm going to say yes. I'm down to 5 questions. I'm going to keep answering these questions as we go to a break here. My next question is your child able to see with or without corrective lenses? So you can see these are fairly cut and dry questions. They are, depending on your child's ability, for some of you, you're going to breeze through these questions and they're not going to be hard questions to answer. They're not going to bring up emotional distress. But if you're getting to the point where you're saying no to these, you're going to notice that you're going to start to feel kind of bummed. Like, oh no, my child can't do that. What does that mean for me? What does that mean for my life? And that is typical. That is going to happen. When you are in a set of questions, any set of questions, and you feel yourself emotionally starting to shut down, I want to encourage you to just finish the questions you have on the page and take a break. Go and do something for yourself. Remind yourself when you're doing something that's good and pleasant for you, whether it's just sitting back and closing your eyes for a minute, making yourself a cup of coffee or a cup of herbal tea. Remind yourself why you're doing this. You're taking this assessment to see where your child is so that you can find the exact moment to start teaching with the exact lesson to help your child to get to the next level. So important that we remind ourselves of the why we're doing it so that we can, and to be kind to ourselves, because this is an emotional thing. Right? Okay, so we're going to take a break. When we come back, I'll have finished the screening questions and we'll be ready to start the true assessment. This just gets us prepared for the through the screening questions to get ready to take the assessment. So stick with us. We're going to be back with more of our skills assessment after these messages.
Looking for some cheap festive napkins for your next party with your kids? Look no further. We're going to be making some hand-dyed paper napkins. While we make this fun activity, you'll notice that these icons will pop up. These icons tell you important information about the skill and where to find it on the Skills program. Skills is an ABA-based online tool that helps parents create curriculum to help teach their children on the autism spectrum. And if you're already a Skills user, this will ensure that you get the most out of this fun activity with your child. Well, let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are paper towels, food coloring, water, a bowl, and rubber bands. Step 1, you're going to take your paper towel and you're going to fold it symmetrically into a shape. This is a chance to be creative to see how repeating patterns are going to be made. Once your paper towels have been folded into different types of shapes and patterns, you're going to take your rubber band and you're going to use that to secure it in place. These are my folded up napkins. Now that they're ready, I'm going to take my water and mix it up with the food coloring and submerge the napkins in it. Once they've been submerged with the food coloring, I'm going to take it out and lay it flat to dry. If you leave it in the water too long, they're going to completely disintegrate, so just leave them in for just a moment. I've been very patient, and here is my finished pattern napkin. Well, I hope you enjoyed this activity with me today. Until next time, guys, craft on. Bye!
To find more about Skills and to access all of the lessons you saw in today's Smarty, visit skillsforautism.com and click on the parent icon. Skills, the online autism solution.
Welcome back to Autism Live. On this very special show, we are featuring how to take, from a parent's point of view, how to take, I'm paying attention to two things here, the skills assessment, and to do it in a way that's productive for you, that's productive for your child. So Kelby is showing you, we just finished doing the screening questions. We logged into a skills account, we created a new child, we answered the beginning information about the child, and most especially, the biggest, most important thing is that we were accurate with their birth date. As I mentioned, if you're really paranoid about letting people have information about your child that's shared on the internet, keep in mind that the security on Skills is tighter than what your bank has. So it's a pretty amazing thing. But if you're still worried about it and you want to change your child's birth date, the only thing I can say to you is just change it by a few days. Put the year and the month in correctly. And what you will see is over time, it will, when your child has a birthday, if my child has a birthday now, it will give me more questions and it'll give me more skills that are appropriate for my child. So do not put the year incorrectly. Okay, so then we went to the next step, which was answering the screening questions. There are very broad-based questions about what our child's ability are. We answered all of those questions and pushed enter on the very last one. And now it has taken me back to my assessment dashboard, which is slightly different than my regular dashboard. You'll see that under the little push pin here, and I'm going to go in a little bit closer here. Under my push pin here, it says my child's name, which we made up a name, 2 Waller. I still have my choose child on my dashboard. I have my start assessment, my choose activity, and over to the side where you can't see start treatment. But you'll see that before my 1 was lit up red, now my 2 is lit up red because I'm on the start assessment page. Now, as I scroll down here, I've got a bunch of different tabs that I can take a look at. It says list all skills by lesson curriculum and search skill by keywords or topics. So now we're going to split off into two different groups here about who is taking this assessment as a parent. And what is your point of taking the assessment? And there are different reasons for taking the assessment. If you are, let's say, a new card client, and your child is about to start getting ABA services, you will be asked to do and complete the skills assessment, the entire thing, as your child, while your funding is being processed and a team is being gathered, which takes a little bit of time. You'll be asked to do your skills assessment. Your therapy won't start until you're done, so it's got to be a priority for you to get it done, right? So for you, you're going to start and with the intent of answering all the questions before you move on to treatment. So you're not going to use the search skill and keyword topics until you're done. When you're done, if you still haven't started therapy, then we're going to talk about that. But you want to get done and get the whole thing banged out and out of the way. You're going to do a good job on it, but you're going to get it banged out of the way. Now, if you're somebody who isn't about to be a card client, but you're interested in doing an ABA program in your home, whether it's with an ABA provider that you have found who will work with you on skills, or you're doing it on your own, depending on what they're saying and how you feel, you eventually are going to want to get to the point where you have completed the entire assessment, but you might be in a place where you're like, I want to start right now, and I know that what we want to work on is toileting. That's the number one thing that I'm concerned about. I do want to find out where my child is in comparison on all of the other skills, but I really want to get started on the toileting. Then you would go to search skill by keywords or topics. You would put in toileting and see the lessons that are there and pick a lesson for yourself. But right now, we're going to stay on the list all skills by lesson curriculum. Okay, you see there that it has a tab. It says that right now I'm in the social curriculum, and this is one of the toughest things to get used to in the skills program, is that it starts always in the social. I don't know why, but it does. And there are different colors that helps you to know which one you're in, but it'll always tell you which one it's in. And if I want to change that, I've got a drop-down menu over here. It says curriculum and it says social. If I click it, it gives me all the other curricular areas. I can go to motor, and you see that the color, when it shows up there, the color where it says lesson name changed from a blue to a kind of rose pink. Okay, but I'm going to go back to the social curriculum, because I do like to start in the social curriculum. I think it's got something for all of us, and maybe that's why it's the place to start. If at any time I am unhappy with my answer that I gave on anything, I can go to the assessment history and I can go back and change something. That's a good thing to know, but we want to, as much as possible, not have to redo things, right? We want to be able to do things and get them done the first time. So I'm in the social curriculum, and for this child, because they're very young and because I answered specific questions about what they could and couldn't do, it has given me a list of different things. Now, you might be a teacher and have multiple children, or you yourself might be a parent who has 2 or even 3 children who are on the autism spectrum, and you might find that it will give you different lessons. That's okay, because it's going off of what you already told it about what the child can do and how old they are. So this first one says that the lesson name is compliance. It is under the social rules domain. It is a level 1, and the number of questions are 2. In the beginning, when you start to do it, you're not really going to care very much about any of those different things, but at different points in the process, all of those things are going to start to make sense and be important to you. Level 1 are the easiest. They are the most basic beginning skills that we want to be working on, and you see that there are only 2 questions in this one. When I was doing this, and I think I am the only person in the history of skills that had to do the complete and total assessment 2 different times, because I was in the test group that did it on paper first and then did it on the computer. And it's a lot to get through, and you have to kind of pace yourself and give yourself reinforcement. And so I would say to myself, all right, I'm going to fill out 2 different areas from each curricula. And at first it was a week, and then I sped it up to per day because I wanted to get it done and get that, and so you start to look, oh, it's only 2 questions. That's going to count as one area, and it's 2 questions. I'm for sure going to do that. Now, if I'm not planning on doing the whole assessment, or there's something I specifically want to work on first, I could click the little eye icon and it'll give me information about what the lesson, gives me a little pop-up about what the purpose lesson is. The purpose of this lesson is to teach a child to comply with basic requests given by therapists, parents, teachers, and other caregivers across the home, school, and other community settings. The indirect goal is to teach the child compliance behavior. And you'll see that I can print that out. I can put it in larger text. I can, give that to somebody if I want to, but I don't want to. If I want to, I can click on the little movie thing and I can watch a movie where somebody explains exactly what is in that little eye box. It's not going to do more than that, but it is a little video of somebody explaining that to me. Because there are some people who like to see it textually, other people who like to see a face. It's up to you. Always with a question area, I have the option, once I've looked at the eye, and I know my child has no compliance whatsoever, that there's none of that whatsoever, I have the option at any point of clicking no. And it will automatically answer all of the things in that area as no. Be careful though. You don't want to waste time. It will make all of the lessons available to you, but you don't want to waste time on things that you don't do. So I'm going to click on the little pencil under Start Assessment. It's going to take me in to those 2 questions. So my first question here, does your child demonstrate age-appropriate levels of compliance across people while in the home setting? Note that typically developing children are not compliant in 100% of opportunities. Indicate yes if your child is generally compliant with instructions that he or she understands and you do not have concerns with his or her level of compliance. And now again, I can click example here. For example, some basic compliance instructions include come here, no, don't, sit down, clean up, all done, stop, wait, and give me, as well as compliance instructions associated with basic household routines such as eating meals, dressing, bathing, housing, chores, and doing work as age appropriate. It's important to consider relevant activities and people with whom the child should comply. So I have 3 choices here. I have yes, no, and probe. Now here's the thing about yes, no, and probe. If I know that my child can do this and I don't want to waste any time working on this because this is not a problem in my life, then I'm going to put yes, they can absolutely do it. If I know 100% sure that my child is not compliant, this is a problem in my life, I'm going to put no. If I don't know for sure, I have 2 choices. I have the choice that I can click probe, and later on when I'm all done, I can print out a sheet that says probe. Now you will see that there are some things that you just have no idea. I was answering a question for my child the other day and I was like, you know what? I don't know if he can do that. It was a question about crossing the midline, that if I put something on the table and I put it, and I asked my son to put one hand behind his back, will he cross the midline with the other hand to pick it up? And I thought, I just don't know whether he can do that. That's a complete and total blank. That one, I clicked probe because I just don't know. And it's going to become my little science experiment. I haven't had time to do it yet, but I'm going to set up the circumstance to see if he easily crosses the midline. My guess is he probably does because I've never noticed a problem. But you know what? I just don't know. Now, other times you think, well, you get into a discussion in your head and you think, well, you know what? Sometimes my child is really compliant with me, but the teacher says he's not compliant, or he's not compliant with me, but the teacher says he's totally fine, so I don't know what to push. When you get into a debate in your head, put no. Because that means that they're not doing it to the level that you want them to do it, and the answer is no. Because what you're saying then is, I think there's at least one area where we still need to work on it, so the answer is no. Don't waste time debating. If it's 100%, gee, I have no idea, probe. If you're like, I'm not sure, do they mean this? It's no. It's no, because you'll have the opportunity to pick between the lessons later on. It will save you time. Don't go down the hallway of, oh, I just don't know. It will not work. So So for this, I'm going to say no. The child is not compliant. I'm going to answer the second question, which is, Does your child demonstrate age-appropriate levels of compliance across people while in community settings? Note that typically developing children are not compliant in 100% of opportunities. Indicate yes if your child is generally compliant with instructions that he or she understands and you do not have concerns with his or her level of compliance. I don't know anyone who has a 2.5-year-old who doesn't have some, I'm going to click no. I don't know any typically developing children where we couldn't work on compliance and have things get better. Okay, so I'm safe in saying, let's say no. I want to work on this, is what you're saying when you say no. All right, notice that I've got two choices down here. I have submit and continue, or I have submit and go back to assessment. Okay, this is where we go to our two different sets of parents. If you are having to fill out the whole assessment, I want you to be brave and bold and submit and push the one that says submit and go back to assessment. Why? Because you're going to get the assessment done faster. You just will. You're going to go back to the assessment. You're going to answer the next set of questions. And by the way, you don't have to answer them in order. You can pick the ones that have the least amount of questions. If you're trying to get the whole thing done, set yourself whatever goal you want for how much you want to achieve on a certain day. And I'm going to show you a really cool trick about that in a minute. If you are the parent who wants to start working on compliance today, if you are somebody who that's what you're starting your ABA program and you're leading the charge here, or you've already got your ABA provider and you want to be working on this today, then you hit submit and continue. Because what will happen, and I'll show you, you hit submit and continue and my little red dot has moved to choose activity. Because now my little dashboard here looks significantly different. It still tells me that I'm in the social curriculum. It tells me that I'm in the lesson section in the child's home. Notice that it says here curriculum and it says social, and it will always take you to social first. So if I've answered a question in the motor, I want to drop that down to the motor, and it shows me the lessons that it's giving me to choose from. What it's telling me is we've found some lessons for you to pick from, something that you might want to work on. And notice that it says level 1 compliance. It's in the domain of social rules. If I click on the thing here, it's going to show me other things that have to do with this. It shows me level 1, level 3. I can go to personal information. I can go to level 4, responding in unison. I can click down to see lessons, but right now I'm in level 1, and we usually want to follow these levels. There are exceptions to this, but if I'm starting out, I should start with level 1 instead of starting with level 3. It shows me here my activity text, and it just gives it to me in a very short way. It says SD compliance instruction. My response, the child responds to compliance instruction within a certain number of seconds. Okay, this is when we're getting into treatment, and this has got a whole host of things that go along with it. But today we're only talking about the assessment. But I do want you to know as a parent that you can click on these things, you can add it to your treatment program. It will open up a much bigger document. It will tell you step by step how to teach this. And we'll, on another date, talk about what the SD and the target response and what all these little boxes here symbolize, because they're so incredibly cool. But I just wanted to show you that that's where you will go, and it takes you down a rabbit hole of, oh, I want to do this. I really want to work on a lesson because I want to see how I would do this. How does it all work? If you're trying to get the assessment done, don't bring yourself down this path. I am going to go back up to start assessment. And if I click on the little dot, it will take me back. Now I've got my red dot. And I can move on to the next thing. You'll notice that the compliance thing has gone off my list, and now I've got eye contact. I just want to show you the plethora, love that word, of the things that are available just in the social curriculum. We kind of talked about this the other day. Eye contact, non-vocal imitation, joint attention, gaining attention, social referencing, assertiveness, greetings and salutation, compliments, apologizing. There are more things that are in the social curriculum, but they are for kids that are older than 2.5. So there are some areas of the assessment that I'm not even being asked the questions because it isn't appropriate for a 3-year-old to be able to do. Okay. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back, and I'm going to go back to the dashboard to show you some of the exciting things that happen on the dashboard that help you to get you motivated to keep moving on, keep completing, to get to that point where you can finally look at that snapshot of your child and have an understanding of where they are in this space and time. So stick with us. Oh, we're already at the A word. Yeah, let's stop for a second and go to the A word. This is the ongoing documentary that's being made by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, following a little boy, Jack Riley, who, by the way, his therapists are using the skills program. That's where they get all of his lessons from, and his parents have an opportunity to see where he is. They had to fill out this assessment before they could start therapy. So take a look. This is the A word.
If everybody's agreed and held hands that early intervention is key, then I can't imagine why. If the Regional Center knew on November 2nd that they didn't speak or make much noise at all during the evaluation, they knew that on that day. I can't comprehend for the life of me why it would even take a month to start speech therapy. That doesn't make any sense to me.
The waiting's hard.
The waiting's really hard. We read things about how the brain is so much more malleable the younger they are. You know, every day that ticks by just seems like a waste of time. You know, you go on the websites and you read all these things, and there's kind of a club, I think, of moms who call themselves autism warriors. And I hated that word when I first read it. I hated it. I still do. Because I don't, you know, there's a lot of things I wanted to fight for, but I didn't really have to fight for autism.
Yeah. It's okay, man. We're lucky in that he sprints to mom.
Okay, this is how my son reacts to me coming home. Oh, Jack Riley. Hi! Mommy's home! Mommy's home! Hello!
When he sprints to me when I get home, and he kisses you and hugs you. Where's my son?
One of the first people that I told when we got the diagnosis was a good friend of mine who knew somebody who had an adopted son who has autism. And had not only fought the fight, I mean, talk about autism warrior, this woman founded a whole foundation and was extremely active and extremely knowledgeable, and my friend put me on the phone with her. She was the one who turned me on to both ABA and to CARD, and to tell me how valuable it was, and we're very grateful for it because we realized that had we not been given information, we never would have known. The Regional Center would not have recommended that for us. So it required us to really push to get what we wanted. And I didn't know even until I asked the question if I had a choice. I thought this was great advice. Don't ever feel that you're at the mercy of the Regional Center because they're paying for your services. She told me, you're paying for your services. They're using tax money to do this and you've paid taxes. Intake at CARD was actually a much more pleasant experience than the Regional Center evaluation. I think in part because we've been through it once and it wasn't as scary for us. It was a good experience for us because we felt like our son was himself. He had all the same things going on as far as autism is concerned, but he was still bright and happy and affectionate. I felt like he showed them both his good sides and the sides that he needs to work on. So for us, it felt good because we felt like at least people were seeing what we see. I felt maybe for the first time that they got it, that it's like, okay, he is this way, this is what he's got going on, but we can make this better. At first, it was exhausting to think that every single thing was a teaching moment, that every single thing that he did, and I know that, you know, I would say something to him and he'd be like, really? Can we just feed him? Can we just feed him dinner and we don't have to worry about it? But now even that's not as exhausting because it's sort of starting to become more natural for us, so that it doesn't feel as awful.
But I remember feeling guilty just for being with him all day, and then, you know, just sort of sneak the TV on to Sports Center in the afternoon, and he's playing with his Legos, and I just back up and lean against the sofa with him between my feet, but I wasn't really watching him. I would just try to watch Sports Center for a few minutes, and then I'd always feel guilty and try to get over that. So
No more guilt.
I think we're teammates. That's the best thing. Is I feel like she's on my side, I'm on her side.
We sort of we've been lucky that my weak moments are his strong moments.
Well, on a personal note, is the camera still on?
It is.
On a personal note, I would be lost. She really dove in, and I mean, I've Googled autism, and I still don't understand it until she explains it to me.
Which is scary because I don't really understand it.
Well, that's the point. But she dives to the next step, and I'm just starting to understand the last step, and she's trying to explain the next step. And I told her last night I would be lost if she wasn't doing that, because I wouldn't. I don't think I could. Sometimes I'm reading these things and it just floats over me because I go numb again reading about it.
Well, I think, in fairness, I think one person in each family has to take that role.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you can both drive. I think there's always somebody in every family who just takes that role.
Yeah. If somebody takes charge, take a back seat. That's the moral of that, isn't it?
Love the A Word. Really encourage you to check out this entire series. It exists on its own. Has on YouTube. You can watch the entire series. Use it as a learning tool. So amazing. Right now, though, we're talking about skills and about how to take the assessment. There are so many different aspects of skills and ways that you can use it that it's important to me for you to understand the individual aspects. So last week we talked about the 8 different curricula areas that it focuses on, but this week I wanted to talk just about the assessment, how to do it, how to get yourself through it, and how to use it as a tool. So we've gone through how to log in, how to add a child, how to be very specific about the birth date. If you really are truly uncomfortable about using the child's true birth date, make sure that you're within a couple of days of it, because everything that happens after that is dependent on that birth date, and they can't go back and change it afterwards. So if you get through half of the assessment and you realize, oh my gosh, now I understand what Shannon was talking about, and you call up skills and ask them to change it, that's the one thing they cannot change, because everything is so geared towards the birth date. So if you must put in a fake birth date, have it be within a couple of days. Don't change the year. I wouldn't even change the month. Okay, so we started answering a couple of questions so that I could show you the process of looking at it and saying yes, no, or probe when you choose which of those things. So important that if you have no idea whether the child can do the skill or not, it's a complete and total, my gosh, I've never tried that, I have no idea, you click probe. If you're looking at it, oh, Kelby, tell me what it is again. Okay. I just logged myself out of the computer. I don't need that for a second anyway. But in any case, we've answered a couple of questions and seen that if we don't understand the question, we can click the view example. It drops down a question that makes it crystal clear. But when we're getting into a debate where we're like, I don't know, she can do it some of the time, or she can do it with some of the people, or you know, that's a tough one. Anytime your head starts to go into that debate mode, click the no. Do yourself a favor, end the debate, click no. Because when you click no to a question on skills, it means I would like for my child to do this a little bit more. I would like to have my child learn this in a stronger way. I would like to learn more about this. You will have opportunities later on when it's in treatment to go, you know, I've thought about it and we're good with this. I don't need to spend any more time on this. You will have that opportunity. But when in doubt, click no. Then you have the choice of moving on and continuing with the assessment or moving on to treatment. I would encourage you, if you're trying to get the entire thing done, to continue back to assessment. All right, it's so important that at some point you finish the assessment. And it'll feel like it's never done because as your child gets older, it adds more questions and then you have to go back in and add more questions. But it's so doable when they have a birth date. You know, the amount of questions you have to answer versus the ones you had to answer in the beginning, it's so doable. But at some point, you will find yourself going back to the dashboard, the main dashboard. And when you do, they have this lovely, and Kelby is showing it to you right there on the screen now. You can go ahead and full screen it, Kelby. Okay, so this is a fake child that I've got there, Hans Fitzwaller. But in any case, look at the top of the tabs there where it says assessment, in treatment, and mastery. Right now, we've got it in the assessment portion because that's the phase that we're focusing on for today. I've got all 8 of my curricula areas, and you'll notice that first part, it says assessed, and it says 0%. Now, as I start to answer questions, I will have a bar graph that matches the picture that goes with each of the curricular areas. I mentioned that in social it's blue. I will have a bar graph that starts to move in that box that's next to the 0%, and the number will move too. So it might tell me that I've got 14%, and it'll show me a 14% on that assessed. You will also notice that it will begin, the numbers for known, unknown, and unassessed will start to change too, so that I can see how many of these that my child is able to do, how many of them I don't know whether they can do, and how many that they are unassessed. And it'll give me the total for them. Now, for me, it was more reinforcing to look at the percentage of questions that were done and that little bar graph. Man, I lived and breathed and died by the bar graph when I was doing the assessment for my child. And so I started out, I think I mentioned that I, would say, all right, I have to answer 2 different areas of questions from each of the different curriculums. And I started out and said I was going to do that per week. And I saw that I just wasn't getting enough done because a lot of them only have 2 and 3 questions, right? So then I moved it per day, but in some cases that was too much. So eventually I switched my motivational tool to the bar graph and to the percentage, that I would say, all right, by the end of this week, I have got to have the language curriculum at 60%. And I'm going to get it there come heck or high water, right? And my husband would see me muttering to the computer as I was answering the questions, right? It really is another motivational tool for you to be able to see where you are in the assessment. But you'll begin to see in the numbers off to the side, and if it puts you off, don't attend to those, but you'll begin to see how much just in terms of numbers, how many of the skills in social that your child knows how to do and how many they don't know how to do, versus how many are unassessed. So you'll start to get a picture. There is another tab that you can go to, and you can be looking at it as you're going along, or you can wait till the very end, where you will literally get a picture. It's a bar graph where it will show you each and every one of the skills that your child does. You can go to the language curriculum and just go through the language operants and see where your child is in terms of manding. It'll show you this is how much your child should know at this age in time, and this is where your child is. And then there's another part that shows, and this is how much progress your child has made. It's so lovely because when you can see, all right, this is where we have to get to, this is where we are, and this is how far along the path we've come, it kicks you in the rear end and makes you go, all right, I'm gonna re-up, I'm doubling down, I'm doing more. So beneficial. But first, we have to get you through the assessment. And this portion of it is just for you to gauge how you're doing in terms of the assessment. I love motivational tools. And that was a big one for me. You will find that there are different areas of the assessment that are fun and different areas that hurt your head. I mentioned before that you will, if you have a child that you feel that you need to fill out the skills assessment for, excuse me, you will get to a point where there are a series of questions that you're gonna get unhappy, where you're gonna start to feel yourself going, oh no. Oh, that's just one more thing that my child doesn't know how to do. I didn't even realize that my child didn't know how to do that. You've got to take breaks. And in your breaks, you've got to give yourself reinforcement and pat yourself on the back for the good job that you're doing. I will honestly tell you that in the mountains that you have to scale, this, while you're doing it, will seem like one of the biggest ones that you've had to do. It isn't. It just feels like it. It feels like it because it makes you face a lot of questions that never even occurred to you to ask yourself about what your child could and couldn't do. You probably will shed some tears. If you're somebody who likes to drink a little bit of wine, I encourage you to drink a little bit of wine when you take a break. If you're not somebody who drinks a little bit of wine, make sure that you have something that reinforces you for the good job that you're doing. I will tell you that the payoff for filling out the skills assessment is boundless. It absolutely is, because when you go to work with your ABA provider and they want to know where your child is in this period of time, you've already done the work. If you're about to be a card client, it is your ticket in to be able to start treatment. You can't start treatment without having finished it. So worthwhile for that. If you're never going to be a card client, being able to say, this is where my child is, and then getting treated to, here are the groups of lessons that your child would benefit from. I know people that pay hundreds and thousands of dollars to pay for an educational consultant to come in and observe their child and put their child through a battery of lessons, and they end up with a less specific snapshot of where their child is and less of an idea of where to begin in terms of teaching them how to catch up on those skills than if they had done skills. Then, when you consider that when it's time to go in for your child's IEP, even if you never move on to treatment and never put anything into treatment as a parent, if you have done the assessment and you have taken the time to do it well, and by the way, there are studies that show that parents filling out this assessment get a result that is accurate and representative of a really good assessment of where the child is. If you take the time to do it, when it's time for you to go into that IEP, you already know what the child should be working on. It allows you to be a part of the team in a way that I have not found anything else. And I mean anything else. Even sitting and talking with somebody who works with your child, I don't know. This gives you a breadth and an ability to understand that I have not found anywhere else. It has helped me personally be able to go into an IEP and get more done. So worthwhile. Take the time, do the assessment, and then on another day, we'll talk about how you utilize it for the IEP, how you use the BIP builder, how you take something, put it into treatment, and why you pick certain lessons to put into treatment and not necessarily all the things that it makes available to you. We'll talk about that on another day, because bite-sized, right? We don't want to overwhelm you, but the assessment, it's worth it. Absolutely worth it, but make sure you reinforce yourself as you're going through it. All right, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back with some in the news that we promised you, so stick with us.
Hi, Lisa Ackerman back with your Talk of Facts, the autism journey questions and answers that you need to help your child make the progress they need. I'm here to talk to you about one really important item. A lot of people ask me the question, well, Lisa, I want to see this specialist in another state. How do I do that? You know, I don't own a jet. I don't have the ability to fly without great pain and travel. Not a problem. We know how to get this done. So I actually encourage families, even though in travel can be a tremendous hardship getting a child with autism through security, through the plane, and in the journey to where they need to go. We have a whole white paper on TACA about how to travel with special needs kids. So it can be done. So travel, we know that can be expensive. Not everyone has an unlimited supply of cash for air flights. We love and work with this group called miracleflights.org. They're fantastic. They will fly you and your child, so one parent, one adult, anywhere in the United States, one time a year. Also in the TACA document are places to stay. So often you will have people in your life that love and support your family and don't know exactly how to help. Ask them to gift you their travel or their rewards cards or coupons for hotel, rental car. That's a great way to be able to get maybe a hotel room that has a refrigerator or a microwave and that's close to a Whole Foods, so you don't have that added cost of going out to dinner, especially if your kid has a lot of allergies. It's important to note that there's not a pediatrician or a specialist by every Starbucks in the United States. Close does not always equal best. So I bring up the travel point so you know that travel is possible, number one, and often it's really going to help you get down the road faster for your kid and getting the answers you need from the specialist that knows what to do. So don't be afraid to travel.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I have some news for you today. You know, especially at the end of the week, I always like to give you a little bad, a little good. So let's start with bad always, right? So we can end with the good. Really disappointing to hear about an autistic young man, 11 years old, who last summer was banned from a plane after being deemed unfit to fly. Now, the family was left stranded in Turkey. They were on a family trip, and there was one leg of the flight. They were in Turkey, and their son, after they landed, was deemed unfit to fly. I'm sure that there are more to the story that will be revealed to us, but Ashrad Sherbaz and Selena Bangham from Birmingham, they had spent quite a bit of money to enjoy a Thomas Cook package holiday with their son, Mustafa, and his sister, Melim, who is 19 years of age. Mustafa, we understand, is profoundly affected by autism and is nonverbal. On the first leg of the flight, there was an incident in which Mustafa had at least a bit of a trouble and had banged on the bathroom door with his foot, from what we understand from what is being reported. When they landed for the second leg of the flight, the family was asked to move to one side and waited while everyone else boarded the flight. And then they were told that their son, their entire party was going to be grounded because their son was deemed unfit to fly. And until he could have a certificate from a doctor, that he could not get back on a plane. The family was in Turkey, had no idea how to go about that. I understand that an ambulance was called. Their son was taken on a stretcher to see a doctor. It took them 2 days to get a form from a Turkish doctor that deemed their child fit to fly, and then they were able to continue home. They are greatly disturbed about it. The Thomas Cook organization has spoken and said that they were concerned for the young man's safety. We'll hear more about this, I'm sure, in the coming days, but it does bring up to mind, for those of you who are thinking about flying, that perhaps before you get on a plane, I know if I'm flying, especially abroad, I will make sure that I have a fit to fly certificate for my son, so that should something like this come up, you've got it with you and are not stranded in a foreign country for multiple days trying to negotiate their medical system. And by the way, the family was forced to pay for the ambulance and the doctor. We wish them nothing but the best and hope that they've all recovered from that. It did happen last summer. Now, on the good news side, we have to give a big shout out to the fabulous Stanley. Recently, a neighbor of Stanley's brought it to his attention that there was a young man on the autism spectrum, an 8-year-old, whose name is Jamel. And he really loves Spider-Man, and so this neighbor said to Stan, would you be willing to draw a picture of Spider-Man for Jamel? And Stan said, artists, not my thing, but we can't let this go. And we understand that he did a lovely drawing of Spider-Man and made sure that it got to Jamel. And we're told, it's being reported by the New York Times, that he had the picture framed and delivered to Jamel's family in their East Harlem apartment. We gotta say, Stan, you the man. You the real deal, Stan. Absolutely love it. All right, we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, I don't know whether we have one doctor or two doctors, but I hear we have two doctors in the house, Dr. Adele Nadowski and Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, so stick with us.
When you find out you're having a boy, you always think like, oh, he's gonna play football, he's gonna do this and that. And then when he's diagnosed, all those things get washed away.
It's like that piece that's always in the back of your mind, where is he, what is he doing? Is he safe?
We really didn't know what we were dealing with. I wish that they could have directed me a little bit more and provided me some information.
I was a young mom. I didn't know what it was like to raise a boy, despite a boy with autism.
Hundreds of thousands of families are not getting the help they need for their children with autism all around the country. ACT Today is determined to bridge the gap. These families really have to go through a lot to get a grant. The application process isn't easy. The records, the diagnosis proof, they're really battling for their kids. So when we can give them a grant, it is so wonderful to see that they succeed in getting that help for their children. Our founder, Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet, is an amazing woman, and she is one of the world's foremost authority on behavior of children with autism. She's extremely knowledgeable, and she oversees every single grant we give. She is part of that process. People may think of autism care and treatment as simply schooling or therapy. But, we provide important safety supports, things like fencing, for example. The whole family's living in fear of that child running out into traffic. I recently delivered an iPad to a little boy with some of the apps that are out there for children with autism. Miracles happen.
I got the iPad from ACT.
From ACT,
What did it say? Can you repeat that, Dustin?
I got the iPad from ACT.
We have helped so many military families, and when I think of these brave families that are fighting two battles, one to protect our country and one for the right treatment and care for their children, it breaks my heart, and I think we have to do more as a nation to help them.
There's not a day that doesn't go by that we don't think about it. Some people say, oh, he's normal. You don't see the battles that I see every single day. My husband does have to deploy, and when they get on that bus, that might be the last time that my kids ever see them.
So I called, and they informed me that he had received the grant, which was like a blessing from above. I was just like speechless. I just started to cry because, without it, we would have been lost.
The ACT grant was a total miracle, and without that, we wouldn't be able to receive the service dog. So we're so appreciative what they've done for us as a family.
Recently, ACT Today funded a program for military children with autism in San Diego, the Inclusion Films program, which is run by Joey Travolta, and teaches kids on the autism spectrum literal filmmaking skills. They learn how to make a movie.
Are we ready? There you go, got it. Okay. Everything that goes into the process of making a film goes into everyday life. So they're learning life skills, they're learning to collaborate.
It was really nice to know how much they were enjoying this camp, and they're with people who are supporting them and are making them feel great about themselves and their differences and their similarities. And I get two kids that are working together and apart and together and apart, so it's an interrelationship as well as a camp and a learning experience.
It's so fulfilling when I get letters. One stands out for me, a boy who was 14 with Asperger's, and we gave him a grant to go to a drama camp. He wrote to us and said, "Dear ACT Today, thank you for letting me belong for the first time in my life." These kids are remarkable. We underestimate them. They're so knowledgeable, they're so capable, and we can change the life of a family, which means changing the life of a community.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm so excited because we have doctors, plural, in the house. Dr. Adele Nadowski, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox are both here with us. It's fun, so much fun when you're here together. I love it when you're separate, but it's really fun when you're here together. We have to start by saying it's the first show back for Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, who has a new baby girl.
Yes, I do.
We need all the details and specs.
Okay, details and specs. Let's see.
Age, so she's what,
3.5 weeks old.
Okay.
Yep.
And when she was born, how many pounds?
8 pounds, 4 ounces.
That's a big baby.
She's a big baby, yeah. And 20
name.
inches.
Are we allowed to say name?
Yeah, sure, of course.
Okay.
Yeah. Maggie June is her nickname. Isn't that cute?
That's precious.
But Margot Juniper Tarbox.
Margot Juniper, so Maggie June.
Maggie June. She actually has a lot of
Absolutely.
nicknames, but that's my favorite.
And you've shared a picture with us, but I don't know that we've given Kelby enough time to get to the picture yet. Oh, we have.
There it is.
I'm sorry, it hurts my feelings. It's so cute. How precious is that? That's a proud papa.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful baby. Maggie June. Well, congratulations to you and to your whole family. We're thrilled.
Thank you.
And we're thrilled that you took some time to be with her.
Yeah, still am. Yeah,
You're
I'm at
taking-
halftime for a few weeks, so
we
it's really
love
nice.
that.
Yeah.
That's what every good dad should do.
Well, it's not easy, but it's.
I'm sure, but
so worth it.
yes, absolutely worth it. And then we should note too that you have some exciting news about a workshop that's coming up.
That's correct.
Part of ARG, Autism Research Group.
That's
so
right.
tell everybody at home about that.
Right, so on March 10th, we have a free workshop for parents on dealing with your child's misbehavior. I think the title of the workshop is Why Does My Kid Do That? And I'm going to be presenting, and it's in the evening of March 10th, and I should probably remember the time. I don't remember the exact time, probably about 7 p.m. or so. It's on the website.
Okay.
But childcare is included for free, so bring your kids, and we're going to babysit them, and they'll have fun and watch a movie and hang out. But what it is basically an overview of proven procedures that work to make you as parents be more empowered to manage your child's challenging behavior in a way that's fun and life-affirming, and it's not just about discipline, it's about building the relationship with your kids that is more disciplined but more positive and just a healthier environment that's more focused on good behavior and that actually works. That's the main thing.
Wonderful. So it's March 10th.
March 10th.
And where is it at? The Thousand Oaks office?
Yeah, it's at the Thousand Oaks card office, which is also the ARG headquarters, which is at 325 East Hillcrest in Thousand Oaks.
Okay.
Suite 140. And they can check out our website, autismresearchgroup.org, for more information on it.
Do they need to be card parents to attend?
No. It's open. It's free to everyone in the public. We do encourage our clients' parents to come, but it's open for anybody for free, and you don't need to have a child on the spectrum. You can be a new parent, an old parent, a seasoned parent. You can be a teacher. You can be a psychologist, whatever. Yeah. Anyone who's interested in that topic, who wants to know more about parenting interaction styles and parenting procedures that really honestly work and build a more positive, healthier relationship with your child who misbehaves. If you're interested in that topic, come and check it out.
So important that you said that you don't have to have a child on the autism spectrum, because I know as a parent spectrum that now I have friends who just have kids and kids engage in behavior that you go,
Of course.
And they come to me and go, why is my child doing this? So I can send them to you.
Absolutely, send them our way. And RSVP, it's not required to RSVP, but you should. That'll reserve a spot on the child care list for you. That does tend to fill up, but yeah, it'll be a
free
good time.
child care.
Yeah, you can't beat that, right?
My goodness, that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And will you be there as well?
I'm not going to be in town at that time. I'm kind of sad, but I'm sure it's going to be successful. And I think we're going to be doing one of these once a month. So in the future, I'll definitely be there.
All of this is part of Autism Research Group's mission of disseminating information to the public about what really works to make a practical difference in the lives of families living with autism every day.
So exciting. Love it. Again, they can go to the website.
autismresearchgroup.org.
Okay, wonderful. Now, a lot of times when you guys are here, we give you questions that people have sent in. We've had a question that has come in a couple of times, and I've said to them, if we don't get to it, send it in. So I'd love it if you guys can get to this question. Hi, my son is almost 4 and just started taking off all of his clothes at night. He is not potty trained, so this is problematic. We haven't changed his clothes or diapers, so not sure why this is happening when we leave the room at night, and do you have any suggestions? They would like to note that he is taking off the diaper as well. Who would like to start?
Well, I don't know how old he is, but my first suggestion.
4.
Okay. My first suggestion would be to maybe dress him in something that he can't take off.
Okay.
So just increase the effort that it takes to get the clothing off. Some kids can't do certain fasteners, for example. I think that would probably take care of the problem. I'm sure he'll be a little frustrated at first, but...
And it might be a little less comfortable for the kid to sleep in that. But if it really is a hygiene problem of the diaper getting open and urine or feces getting on the bed and everything else, then it might be worth it to start with that.
Okay. I know that we have some parents that will take the footy pajamas that have the zipper, they cut off the feet of them and put them on backwards and zip it up so children cannot get out.
There you go.
You know,
Perfect solution.
I mean, it's not the long-term solution for anything, but, you know, in terms of putting a patch on it for right now to get to the next thing, it's something that can be pretty effective.
Yeah, and then since your child's 4, you might start working on potty training. Maybe he's even potty trained during the day, so you could start to do the potty training with the pull-ups at night while he's wearing his stuff backwards, and then once he's showing that he can get through the night without wetting the bed, then maybe we don't care if he's naked when he's sleeping. I'm not, you know, that kind of thing. I'm not too sure, but...
Okay. I wanted to ask a question that came in recently. My autistic daughter has developed a tic disorder, vocal and physical. Will these go away, or is there anything I can do to help her alleviate them?
Well, so one thing I'd like, as I always say on your show, and I'm sure Dr. Nadowski too, is when I'm not an expert on something, I should say, I'm not an expert on that, but maybe here's some practical advice. But and I'm saying this right now, I'm not an expert on tic disorders specifically. Right. That is a separate diagnosis from autism. There's people with tic disorders that do not have autism, people with autism, you know, et cetera. Yeah. And it is a real thing that's separate from just having tics sometimes. So that's one thing to kind of figure out, is whether your child really has a tic disorder per se, or is a child with autism who's also engaging in repetitive behavior that kind of looks like a tic sometimes. Yeah. So if it's repetitive behavior that kind of looks like a tic sometimes, I would treat it just like any other repetitive behavior that folks on the spectrum engage in, and there's lots of proven ways to treat that. And no, it usually will not go away with time. If anything, repetitive behaviors often get worse with time. But it's, you know, the main thing there is giving the individual something else to do that produces the same type of satisfaction. So if she's engaging in the tic when she's nervous or has anxiety, then give her something else to do that makes her feel better when she's nervous and has anxiety. Maybe something to play with her hands that she can hold in her pocket that doesn't look too socially inappropriate. Maybe, you know, knitting with your fingers, or rosary beads, or whatever. Just something to do that kind of keeps you busy and calms you down a little bit, that looks less socially inappropriate.
Okay. Anything you want to add before we go to break? It's good advice.
One thing I would just add is that sometimes, for whatever reason, when we teach kids to self-monitor, they become more aware of their behavior, and sometimes it just decreases. So that's something maybe just to try, because sometimes they're not even aware that they're doing it.
That's right. And to not make it aversive and not make it a big deal, but even just maybe take some videotape of the child engaging in the behavior, and then sit down and say, okay, cool, we're going to watch the videotape, and let's see, you tell me when you're doing whatever they call the behavior. Mom probably already has a name for it. You tell me when you're doing it. And then each time she does it on the video, you pause and go, yeah, that's right. Yeah, see, you just did it. Okay, play. And that, like that. And you're not making it really negative. You're not making it stressful or aversive for the child, but you are just teaching them to notice it on themselves when they do it. And then you can even move on to teaching them to take data on it by clicking a golf tallier or making hash marks on a paper. Things like that. That in itself is part of habit reversal, which is a treatment package that's been shown to be effective in decreasing tics.
I appreciate you giving the example, though, because the one thing we don't want to do is shame them over it.
No, absolutely.
Make them feel bad about it.
In fact, that could make it worse, because a lot of tics are related to anxiety, and when you're punishing someone, you're increasing their anxiety, and that could actually set the occasion for them to engage in the behavior more.
Yeah. Okay.
And you can add reinforcement, of course, to that for the absence of doing it, or for decreasing the number of times that you're doing it and everything. But I think the important piece is what Jonathan started with, was that giving them something else to do when they're under the circumstances in which they would normally engage in the tic behavior.
Absolutely.
And if it is a tic disorder, there are behavior analysts who specialize in treatment of tic disorders, and they can seek those people out too.
I think that's a really important topic too, because we've talked before on the show when people will write in and say, you know, I'm having a feeding issue problem. And, you know, one of the first things that I always say is, well, you know, you probably want to work with a BCBA, but maybe not just any BCBA. And I think that's a really hard distinction for all of us as parents to understand, that, you know, the comparison that I come to, and tell me if it's a working comparison, that if you have an Audi car and, you know, you go to a mechanic, you don't want to just go to any mechanic. You might want to go to somebody who specializes in Audis because you're having an Audi problem.
Absolutely. Or a general practitioner versus a foot doctor versus a brain doctor.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, in behavior analysis, there aren't separate certifications for the different specializations. It's all just one certification. And so it depends on your experience and your training.
Yeah.
But what you can do is literally go to a BCBA and say, I want you to refer me to another BCBA that you know of that specializes in X, Y, and Z. They can also go on on Facebook, and there's a number of Facebook groups like Behavior Analysts for Autism is the name of one of the Facebook groups, and they can just post the question on there. Hey, I'm a parent. Can anyone recommend a behavior analyst who specializes in X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, and even within some ABA providers, I know sometimes at CARD, something will come up and I will say, who's the person to talk to? And they'll say, oh, you know, this is the person who is really has an expertise in that and is so interested in that. This person knows more about this. Because you find, I imagine as BCBAs and working with children, you find yourselves gravitating towards certain issues that are of interest to you.
And it just depends on where you worked and who you're trained by. You know, I just happened to have worked at Kennedy Krieger, where I was trained on feeding disorders and severe problem behavior. But if I had worked somewhere else, I wouldn't have received that training, even if it was a different, good quality agency. You know what I mean?
But would you say though that you were particularly interested in that? I mean, part of it was you were exposed to it, but then you kept working in it.
I sought out the severe behavior part. The feeding part was just an accident. It was just a cool coincidence that like changed my career.
Okay. And we know that you particularly like the feeding questions as
well. The feeding thing was an accident for me as well. Yeah, I was working at the Nevada Center for Severe Behavior Problems, and we would get kids in with certain issues. And we had one that had food selectivity. It wasn't extremely severe, so we felt comfortable enough to read the literature, and we just read it all and tried to help this child. If I had gotten a child that was like complete food refusal, I probably would have referred them because I wouldn't have felt comfortable trying that. You know, this kid was already eating, but just not eating a variety. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
And then it went from there. So it just kind of built, and we continued to educate ourselves. And I have friends that are specialize in that as well, that I'd pick their brains and everything like that. But it was based on a need of a kid, and we were going to help them. So that's kind of how that happened.
But I think so important for us as parents and for teachers out there who aren't in the behaviorist world to understand that if you have a very specific issue, that you can reach out and ask for somebody who has an expertise in that specific issue.
That's right.
And you will get more done faster if you reach out that way with all hope.
That's right.
All right, we're going to take a break and be back with more of your questions for Dr. Jonathan Tarbox and Dr. Adele Nadowski. Stick with us.
Hello, fellow activists. Last week, we talked about the first step to empowerment. Accept and embrace this challenge. Sometimes you have people that support you in your denial. Maybe it's your husband. Maybe it's your mother. When I expressed my concern to my pediatrician about Wyatt losing language around the age of 2, his response, maybe he's a late talker. He's a boy. Let's wait and see. But what about the temper tantrums? What about the fact that he put his head through the kitchen window? What about the bite marks and scratches all over my arms and chest? He said he's probably just frustrated that he can't express himself. Let's wait and see. But autism doesn't afford us that luxury. Of course, I was relieved with my pediatrician's reassurances, but I should have gone with my gut, because if I had, I could have gotten a diagnosis 2 years earlier, and I lost 2 valuable years that could have been spent on early intervention. And finally, when Wyatt was diagnosed, he was misdiagnosed. But of course, part of that was my problem too. I lied in a lot of those parent questionnaires so things looked better. I can't turn back the hands of time, but I can recommend that you face this challenge head on. Denial prevents us from walking a path we eventually will have to walk anyway. The sooner you face the truth, the sooner you can help your child. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep the faith.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are here, a very special treat that we have both Dr. Adele Nadowski and Dr. Jonathan Tarbox with us at the same time. I feel like the queen of I don't know what, but something good. Okay, so I have a couple of questions here that we want to ask opinions of these two wonderful doctors. Somebody has written in and said, we haven't told our son about his diagnosis. Earlier this week, we had Exceptional Minds on, and they said the summer program at Exceptional Minds looks fantastic. But if we send him there, it's a given we have to tell him. Everyone in the family, extended and husband, are against telling him. I've started to leave my autism books out. Good or bad, my son doesn't care about books. Your thoughts, and thank you very much.
Okay. So my initial thought is just it's a personal preference as to whether or not you want them to know. And I think there's pros and cons to telling and pros and cons to not telling. So maybe we could give a few of those.
Yeah.
I don't think necessarily, is the age of the child on there?
I believe, if I'm right in knowing this child, that they're a young teenager. So I think around 13.
So, it could be the type of thing where this child has always thought something's wrong with them, or they feel different, and maybe it'll be a relief for them to know. It could be the opposite, where it would devastate them. So you want to think about those possibilities. If you send them to this mind place or whatever in the summer, Exceptional Minds, they'll probably figure it out. But also you could say, they're going to work on certain things there that you have similar characteristics of. Like, I actually have a client where they will be bringing their 17-year-old to our center, and it says CARD, Center for Autism Related Disorders, but don't want him to know that he has autism, and I was kind of concerned about that. But they were okay with me saying, yeah, we're actually just coaches and we help people, and we started out as an agency that helps autism, but at the same time, there's a lot of behaviors that we help, and so, it's not just people who have autism, but you have some similar things that are related to that, so we're going to help you as well, kind of a thing.
It's a good point, and I do think that at Exceptional Minds, they have individuals who have other things besides autism, and I think there's a way that you could get away with sending him and not telling him.
The only problem would be is if it's super transparent and he'll just feel you're lying to him, and then he's not going to trust you. So kind of you have to weigh all these kind of things and figure out.
There is that. Yeah, I really feel like it comes down to personal preference, but it sounds like Mom is getting to the point where she's ready, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing to acknowledge and know that you're ready. It sounds like there's a bunch of other people who aren't ready, but what I don't know is the individual ready?
Right, and I've actually talked to a lot of young adults and adults on the spectrum who specifically said, I'm glad my parents told me, because I always wondered why things are so much harder for me than they are for all the other kids in school. And so I think that if you make that choice, that personal choice, that it is time to talk to your child about it, that I think that the way that you talk about it is just absolutely critical. And there's a real consistent pattern in our culture of talking about how disorders cause things that is really, really bad and really insidious. And so I think we want to really avoid that. What a normal, real common thing to do would be like, oh, I have autism, that's why X, Y, and Z. So I have autism, that's why I can't make friends. Or I have autism, so that means I'm stupid. Or I have autism, so that means there's something wrong with me, right? When in fact, autism is a name for a wide, very dispersed collection of challenges and strengths, right? And that every kid is different. And that in each individual child's case, autism maybe is the label that gets put on the fact that you have to try a little harder to pay attention to stuff, to pay attention when other people are talking. For some people, it's really easy to pay attention. For others, it's harder. Kind of like in the way that, a short person, they can play basketball. It's going to be harder, It doesn't mean they have a disorder. It doesn't mean they should feel ashamed, a non-basketball disorder or something. It just means, I'm going to have to work extra hard, So same thing with me. I'm a terrible dancer. I'm sure I could learn how to dance if I wanted to, right? But it would take 10 times the amount of time to learn how to dance as compared to someone who's more gifted in that way. So I think if we think about it in terms of that, rather than here's this bad thing in my brain that makes things happen, it's just a descriptor.
Yeah.
And it's not a positive or negative, it's just a name for different types of challenges, and that everyone in the world has challenges. Absolutely everybody.
Yeah.
I think the last time they looked, something like 30% of the population could get a diagnosis in the DSM. In other words, it's just normal. Nobody's perfect. Everyone has challenges. And
absolutely.
So I think that's a good sort of perspective to discuss it from.
Super advice. And, I would just tag on to that if I think parents, we fear that there will be a moment that our child will say to us, well, I can get away with this because I don't have autism, no matter how we put it.
Sure.
And I just want to say to you, just plan on that happening. It's likely that that's going to happen, and be prepared for it, and be prepared to have a big non-reaction to it. And that it doesn't let them out of the thing that they say that they're, because they're growing, and especially in the teenage years, they're intelligent, and they're going to use any excuse they can to get out of something that they don't want to do.
That's what all
and they're
kids
going to
do.
trot it out to see if it works, and you just be prepared to not have the, oh, woe is me, I knew this was going to happen, I shouldn't have done that moment. You can do that in the bathroom when you have your own time.
Yeah,
But-
and I would emphasize is do be prepared to be extra hurt when you hear that. Like that's going to hurt a lot when you hear your child say that to you. But also just acknowledge that it's just another excuse. It isn't anything deeper, darker, scarier, worse. It just hurts more to hear.
Yes.
But it's not a big deal. It's just the same as any other excuse that any other teenager would come up with.
Yeah. And don't let them get away with it.
And don't let them get away, just like
out
you
of the
wouldn't with
thing.
anything else.
Yep. And I do think that there does come a point, and maybe it's now, maybe it's not now, but there does come a point where it's kinder for us to tell our kids that that's what's happening. We have to throw it back.
What if there's a point in time where they could lead like a very regular life and be married and have a job and lots of friends, and they never had to know that they ever went through that? Wouldn't that be cool for someone if they didn't have to?
That would be cool for them, but that feels a lot like that wonderful movie with Jim Carrey, where he had this wonderful life, but they were all actors. The Truman Show. Thank you.
Oh yeah.
They were all actors, and then when in the moment when he found out that his experience of things was different than what everybody else experienced in his life, it felt like everything was lost to
Major
him.
betrayal, yeah.
Everything was lost to him. And I know as a parent that there were a whole bunch of people that when I started saying to them, I think something's up with Jem, and I think, and they were like, no. But after a while, they started to notice it too, and they started talking quietly in rooms, other places, and I would walk in, and everybody would stop talking about it, and I sensed it and said something is not right here, so that when I said my child does have autism, and everybody said, yeah, we did think, I lost friends over it. Because I thought you didn't care enough about me and trust me enough to say something. And we've had many people here on the show. We had a guest on Tuesday, a 59-year-old man who his parents knew when he was 13 and didn't tell him till he was 21. And expressed that, I kind of would have liked to have known some of these things. I think it comes out in some way.
Yeah.
And then there's a loss.
I think maybe I'm talking more about that kid who got really early intervention and they got the best possible outcome and they got their diagnosis removed. Do they need to be burdened with knowing
At
those
age
details?
5 or age 7 or something like that.
When they don't really even remember necessarily, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All of that kind of stuff. And also my main reason for it is I feel like everyone treats that person differently for the rest of their lives. Like, for instance, I knew someone who was very sick and couldn't work for 4 months, and when that person came back, everyone babied the person and treated them differently, and they didn't like that. You know what I mean? They wanted to be treated the same way that they had always been before, and they felt like everyone treated them like a handicapped person now, when in reality, that wasn't necessary. It
is an interesting argument, and I don't know that I know the answer to that. But it is an interesting thing, and I guess time will tell, and we'll have
like
to
you
hear
brought
from
up to me once how whenever maybe it wasn't you, but I feel like someone told me when they see someone who's recovered from autism, they kind of like over-evaluate them,
totally
like they're
do.
like watching their every
I'm looking
move.
for the cracks. I'm looking for the cracks. I'm looking and going, look at what they can do. Look at what, look at that. Wow, that's amazing. I do look
That's
at
not
them, and
cool,
I apologize. And I say to them, you see what I'm doing, and I apologize that that's what I'm doing, but I do. I just become like a stalker. I'm just, looking at every little thing, and I bring it up, and I say, and usually they will say to me, no, you're a parent. I'm used to getting that from parents. Which is sad to me that, and I do think it's why more individuals who have recovered don't go out into the public eye, because they don't want that sort of treatment. And heaven knows we benefit from them coming out into the spotlight and saying, look, this was me at this age and this is me now, and none of you know it. Our whole community benefits from that, and I'm one of the people that's preventing it by going, look at how fascinating you are. But it's hard. It's hard not to.
Well, and I'd have to draw a parallel with a lot of mental health issues. I mean, when a vet comes out and says, I struggle with PTSD and I'm doing better now, what is everyone doing? They're looking at him going, is he crazy, basically, And that's just, it stinks, but I think that's kind of how our culture is. I mean, once someone has a label, people are socialized to just evaluate that person in terms of that label, which is like a really wrong way for all of us to be treating each other to begin with.
Absolutely. I'm going to, because we're running out of time, I'm going to move on to this other question that we have that's about hygiene. I just got to see where it is on the thing. Okay, how do we teach good hygiene habits? Sorry, this is unsavory. High-functioning teenager likes, and this is what they said, high-functioning teacher likes to scratch his hair, used to put the dandruff in his mouth. I saw this and pointed it out to him. He wasn't even aware. I hope it's not happening anymore. He used to put his fingers in his mouth, and I've seen his peers cringe away from him. Pointed this out to him. Frequency is now very low at home, but I don't know about school. He keeps his hair short. At home, he tends to put his hand down there. When reminded, he will stop. He doesn't do that in public. Is this anxiety related? And thank you for your wisdom and kindness. These are tough issues. Because sometimes our kids aren't aware of how their peers are looking at them. Different issues for my son, but he has a couple of things that he has done that I've seen, the girls in his class go, ew, and you just go, oh man, this is tough. Tough stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think with typically developing kids, they do all that kind of stuff all the time, but then they're more socially tuned in. So the first few times they get admonished by their parents or their peers, the behavior goes away.
Right.
And a lot of our kiddos on the spectrum aren't tuned in as much. So they don't even notice that it bothers parents or peers. Or even when parents do point it out, it's just another thing mom's pointing out. She's nagging me again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's
so how can we help them? Do we just lay down rules? And this is kind of the thing that I always have to go back and forth with Jem. Do we just lay down rules and not worry about filling them in on what the social component of it is and say, we don't stick hands down pants in school? Or do we say, here's the rule, we don't stick hands down in pants, and we don't do it because of what they're thinking?
I like the latter. It's not necessarily like that's going to work with every kid, because if they're not socially motivated and they don't care what other people think of them and that's not a reinforcer for them, then that kind of just sounds like, well, like whatever. And it's the rule that really matters. But I think that we don't know for sure, and so why not? It can't hurt anything to add that in.
Okay.
If they actually care about making friends and not being, if they have like any perspective taking at all and they don't want to be embarrassed or mistreated, maybe, those kind of things, you can bring that in. Like if they don't, care whether or not they have friends, that's one thing, but maybe they care if they're getting bullied. So you could be like, well, if you do that, then these kids are going to be mean to you and treat you poorly, and you don't want that either. So I think it's good for them to know the reasons.
Yeah, and the key is reasons that they value, not reasons that you value.
Okay.
So it has to be reasons that they value.
Okay. So for this individual that we don't know very much about, but I would put this on the hierarchy. The hands down the pants to me is the most important.
Absolutely.
That needs to be the thing that gets under control first, because as the person gets older, that's something that eventually you can get sent to jail for.
Right.
How do we figure out from him what is meaningful enough for him that we can say to him that's a consequence for it, so he'll stop?
Yeah, so I would come up with all the possible consequences that you can think of, of doing the behavior and of not doing the behavior, and have a discussion about those different consequences.
Okay.
And usually I feel like individuals can tell you whether they care about something or not. It's a high-functioning individual like this. And so then, once you've identified one of those consequences that actually matters, then start talking through how you connect the behavior today with that outcome next week or a year from now.
Okay.
So whether that consequence is getting a girlfriend and dating eventually, or whether that consequence is not getting arrested by the police,
Right.
Or getting kicked out of school. Maybe they want to enroll in community college, but you're not gonna be there if you're putting your hands down your pants. You're gonna be ejected immediately.
Right.
Whatever it is, but then you just lay out that rational for today, next week, next month, next year, kind of how this behavior right now connects with the outcome that matters to them.
Okay. Do we need to do a replacement behavior? Do we need to investigate what the reason why the hand is going down the pants? Do we need to concern ourselves with that?
Is it the underwear are uncomfortable and we need just different kinds and they're adjusting themselves, or is there rashes, stuff like that? But then also, if it's masturbation, then they need to be taught that you can only do that when you're by yourself and under certain closed door kind of things.
I will say that, I have to worry as my son gets older, there's a certain amount of stuff that he doesn't want me talking about anymore. But when he was very young, we were very graphic with our language about how we try not to be shy around the house so that he doesn't have to be embarrassed about stuff. And so he was probably 4 and he stuck his hands down his pants and was doing something, and the therapist said, dude, what are you doing? And my son turned and was very graphic and said, well, this is sticking to this and I needed to unstick it. and everybody kind of went, oh! And then we had to have a discussion about when it's appropriate to say what things. And then our male therapist actually did lessons in how to rearrange your stuff without actually touching it, which was fascinating to those of us who were female in the room. I am totally serious. I
want to know more about that.
I'll give you a demo when we're not on camera.
This is a family show, guys.
Right, it is. But you know what? I mean, these are real life things that I know you are. But these are real life things, and it was fascinating to me because it would never occur to me, and frankly, it didn't occur to my husband either. That you see the baseball players up on the mound, and they're doing all these interesting moves, and you're like, what in the heck is going on there? We got a whole education in our living room that my son still utilizes, and I do think that sometimes we always talk about breaking down a lesson. That if you're uncomfortable, we're not saying to them, be uncomfortable forever. We need to give them socially acceptable ways of getting uncomfortable, getting more comfortable while you're in the public. And I had no idea. I had not been paying attention that there are a variety of different ways.
Well, one of them is just do it when no one's looking.
There is that.
Just go to the bathroom.
Yeah. But when you're in junior high school and high school, that you have to get a pass to leave, and you can't always go. And if you're a baseball player on the mound, you don't get to say, "Excuse me, I'm going to step off the field to go to the restroom to rearrange some stuff," keeping it PG. But you know what I mean? So yes. How long do we have, Calvin? We only have 2 minutes. So in any case, so it is worthwhile to investigate whether we've got a dandruff problem, whether we've got an issue, whether there's a rash.
And if it's none of that, if it's just sort of a habit, then give them a replacement behavior, like you said. Maybe an object that they can hold in their pocket and manipulate with their hands. Like some people manipulate their keys in their pocket. That can be kind of loud, so it can be an object that doesn't make noise. But yeah, something else to do.
Okay. Wonderful. I thank you guys so much. Do we have you both next week, we think? Mm-hmm. We'll consult our calendars.
I think so. All right. I need to check my baby schedule.
Just want to remind everybody that we've got a really exciting week for you next week on the show. We believe that we're having Hayden and Danny, the Asperger experts who had to reschedule last week. We believe that we're having them on the show next week, and a whole cavalcade of experts, and hopefully Dr. Jonathan Tarbox and Dr. Adele Nadowski. A couple of things that I want to point out to you guys before we leave. We've got 1 minute left. This Saturday, if you are in the Los Angeles area, there is the kickoff for the Los Angeles Walk Now for Autism. It's at the Rose Bowl. It is not tomorrow, Saturday. You can find it on their website. I am one of the speakers that will be there. If you're going to be there, make sure that you come up to me and we get an opportunity to meet. It really promises to be a very fun event with a band and everything. So excited about that. We've got some other events that we're going to be at, and we're going to keep you guys posted. We're going to be starting to add them to the calendar because we love meeting you in person.
And your viewers who have not met you in person should know that you really are just like this. This is the real deal.
That's the best compliment you could ever give me.
That's true.
Can I just say that's really, except I think I cry more in person than I do here, if that's even at all possible. Those of you who were at the Mardi Gras for Autism, we had a box of tissues, didn't we? And we give hugs, so that's a really fun thing. But if you're going to be there on Saturday, would love an opportunity to meet you. Kelby says we're out of time, but we'll see you again on Tuesday. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.